You're listening to the Woman of Value podcast. You are about to hear the story of a woman who is following her dreams and passions and creating positive change in the world.
I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I just, I had a good job. I had all of the things, but I never really was doing something that I felt passionate about. And that's when I had that moment. Was when I said, what do you want to do? Do you want to sit around this house and curl up and die? Do you want to do that? Or do you want to create a new life for yourself?
Melani Robinson is an award-winning blogger. She's a writer and an online dating expert. She was named one of the best online dating experts, and despite that, she's still single. She is a friend of mine. She is a fantastic person on top of all of her other accolades. And I am so excited to welcome you to the Woman of Value podcast, Melani.
Oh, thank you, Sandy. I am very excited to be here.
I want you to take us through that aha moment that you had when you realized that you needed to make a change and claim your value.
It was a really, really bad time for me. My husband had passed away. He was the love of my life, and we had only been together a short time. And I had certainly had dated my share of idiots before him, and he was amazing. And we just fit. So to lose him at such a young age, I was 45 years old. So to lose him at 45 years old, and we'd only been together 5 years, was devastating. And I really didn't know what I wanted to do as far as, and this is being very honest, I didn't know if I wanted to stick around. I didn't know if my life could have meaning again without this person, because I had seen my life in a certain way. And I saw how what my life would be. I'd waited so long to find him. I found him, we're happy, and then he dies. I had to reimagine my life. And that's a very hard thing to do when you especially like the life you were living before.
Yes.
So that's the point that I was at. And I had a couple of years of just absolute grief, and I, those years, I mean, I had a hard time getting out of bed. I had a hard time with friendships. People, there really wasn't a support group for younger widows. I went to a support group, and they were all 80 years old, and I'll never forget, they said to me, well, do your kids call you? My girls were in college. I have two daughters, and they from a previous marriage, and they were in college. Well, do your kids call you? I said, yeah, they call me every day. Well, what do you have to complain about? So I was like, oh my God, I'm in the wrong place, and there was nobody around that I could talk to about it, that related to that kind of loss at this point, at that point. And so I went to a couple of grief therapists that came highly recommended, and both of the highly recommended grief therapists started crying when I told them my story. So I'm handing them a tissue and thinking, okay, I'm comforting them. It's okay. It'll be all right. And finally I went to a woman, and I found her on Yelp, and she was just, I know, the highly recommended ones cried. And then I found this woman on Yelp, and she was kind of a spiritual, she was an old hippie chick is what she was. And she said, everything you're doing is okay. I felt like I needed to do so. And she said, just allow yourself to, she said, you gotta, and she used the F word, you got an effing raw deal, is what she said to me. And so she said, you got to figure out what you're going to do. And so I started thinking about what I wanted to do. And when you're in isolation like that, there is an incredible amount of time to really look at everything very honestly. You're raw. Nothing is going to hurt you. And so self-examination doesn't hurt. You can be brutally honest with yourself. And I realized that I had spent my whole life being everybody else's cheerleader. And I was great at it. And my children and my spouse and my friends, and I would encourage them to do these amazing things and take these risks and be brave and all the things that I believed I really was. I'm encouraging them to do it. But yet I didn't have the courage to do it for myself. And so it looked like I was leading this selfless life because I was devoted to my girls, and I worked hard at my job, and I was a great friend, and I was an amazing wife, and I was all those things. But I was at sacrificing myself, and intentionally, because I was afraid, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I just, I had a good job. I had all of the things, but I never really was doing something that I felt passionate about. And that's when I had that moment, was when I said, what do you want to do? Do you want to sit around this house and curl up and die? Do you want to do that? Or do you want to create a new life for yourself? A life in a place that you've never been before, because everywhere I drove was a memory. Every time I passed something, and when you're in grief, you look for those things to feel sad about. You go, oh, I can't go down that street. That's the hospital street. Or, oh, I remember when we sat there and we had the most delicious dinner. And so when you're in grief, it's like a cycle. Mm-hmm. It's, I see the kind of car he drove and driving by, and so you're just all wrapped up in that. And I decided I had to make a big change, and that's exactly what I did.
First of all, just to have gone through such a tough time and to get to the point where you wanted to die. I mean, mm-hmm. that's rock bottom. That is the lowest you can go. And that you pulled yourself out and you did seek help. And I think it's important for our listeners to know that it isn't a straight path from grief to recovery or to finding the light again. That sometimes you have to get really down, and you can go up and down and up and down, and all different stages of grief until you're ready to make that change. So I wanted to address that. And I wanted to also talk about the support group issue, because I have gone to many support groups that sucked, and I can totally relate. I think a lot of people think, oh, that's what you got to do. You got to go find your people. And often support groups make you feel sadder and worse about yourself, because it's often a place for people to bitch and moan, to just like your sadness was echoed in the places and in the memories. I think that a lot of times people go to support groups for the same thing. They just want to stay stuck in their sadness and have people go, oh, poor thing. And then it makes you feel worse. So you were smart, you had a resilience, and you sought out the right people, even when the therapists were crying and you're sitting and comforting them. I totally can relate to all of this. It's like, and you're a strong person. So you knew you had to find somebody else, and you continued on your journey until you found Dr. Yelp. There was one more thing that you said about being everyone's cheerleader, and you said you almost lived a selfless life, or I forgot the words you used.
Selfless by choice. I mean, it was intentional.
Yeah,
it wasn't and those weren't good. I was hiding behind my selflessness.
Yes, and I think a lot of people do. I think this is something that will resonate for a lot of people, because we tend to dim our lights to make other people shine. We're really good at that, especially women. And so recognizing that I have a light too, and that's the pivotal moment. So we're going to find out now, where was that light?
I had always enjoyed writing, and I had worked in corporate training. So I would write training manuals and kind of technical writing and create training programs and leadership and management programs. But I never wrote for pleasure. So when my husband and I, the last years we were together, we were in Russia. And so in Russia, I would send these monthly emails to my friends and his friends about how ridiculous our life was in Russia. And everybody started sharing them. So they were sharing them. And then I was hearing from strangers that it's funny and hilarious and all of that. And my husband said, you should write. You really should write a book, write this, and I felt, I would laugh or I would get annoyed with him. And those were both defense mechanisms because I did not feel that I could do that. And I felt that so what, I can do a clever email, but to write a book or even an article or anything like that, I could never do that. But I enjoyed it so much. And I don't know if he saw that passion or if he thought the writing was that good, because honestly, I've looked back now and it wasn't that great. I would edit it a lot now. But after he died and when I was kind of, almost a shut-in, I started writing about the two of us and our relationship and how we met. And I felt this joy when I was writing, even though it was often sad because I was reflecting back on things and I'd have to put myself there. I still had this joy, and I would sit down at my computer and I would look at the clock, and I had been sitting there for 4 hours and it felt like it was 5 minutes. And I thought, oh, this is it. So I decided that I wasn't going to stay stuck in that, and I knew that I would always miss him, and I would always be feel that a part of me was broken because of that loss. But I figured I need to create a new life in a place with very few memories. So I wanted to write. So I thought, where can I go where I can feel that excitement, and where I can take classes and join writers groups and do all that the stuff that I know I need to do, because I'm not that great at this. I love it, but I'm not that great. So I thought, that's it. I'm going to New York City. I'm going to immerse myself in the literary world and do whatever it takes. And so I got rid of almost everything that I owned, rented an apartment on the Upper West Side. It was small. I put down blue painter's tape in my living room in my house, and I pushed my furniture that would fit into the size of my bedroom, the size of my living room, pushed that in there. And it wasn't much, and I shipped it, and then I got in my car with my dog and drove to New York City. The rest is history.
Yeah. So you really just started all over again. And
I did.
A lot of people would be petrified to make such a big change, and you just dove right in. And also I really admire your ability to see that you needed to get some support around how to be a better writer, because you knew you had the talent. But it's also important to get support. And I say this all the time, like, a lot of people are afraid to make change because they don't think they have what it takes. And if you have that dream, that little inkling, that little flame, it's important to get somebody to help you spark the flame to get bigger.
I had the luxury of doing that too. I couldn't have done that. I couldn't have changed my life like that if my children would have been elementary age. I would have had to find another path, and I would have had to think of another way, or perhaps I would have just stayed stuck. I don't know. But I had the luxury of having a little bit of savings and the ability to only have to worry about myself. And it really was for the first time in my life. But I will say that had I had the courage earlier to kind of explore this. And that's why I think it's important for women, because for women, for anyone really, to look back on the things that bring them joy. And it's sometimes it's, so basically when I reflected back in the past, thought about the things that I enjoyed the most, really all roads led to this. I enjoyed writing. I enjoyed writing these programs that I was writing. I enjoyed creating these things that I create. I loved writing those emails. I loved writing cards to people and really putting something that was meaningful in the card when I would give them a card. Everything that I really loved was all about writing, was all about words. I loved when I loved to read to people. I loved to read to my husband. And so there were so many clues, but I think I was too scared to even explore that. It was I could fail. Yeah. I could fail. But I had gone through something, the worst thing had happened to me. And so when you have an experience that is horrible, you think, what's the worst thing that could happen? I get to New York City and I fall flat on my face. I mean, that's okay. Yeah. It didn't, I wasn't so frightened anymore. I knew what I was up against. I knew my age. I knew my, my lack of a degree in creative writing or journalism. I didn't have any of that. I knew that, didn't have my MFA. I mean, I really didn't have a lot going for me. But I just thought, that's okay. I knew I would have to put in hours and hours and days and weeks and months and years. And I was willing to do that.
And you don't need the MFA, and you don't need 100 degrees. And this is what holds people back often. I see that analysis paralysis a lot, where it's like, I just need that one last thing to be ready. And right. You just dove right in. And I totally hear you on having experienced crisis and tragedy, where it's like, I've already done that. Like, I know what that's like. So what's right. The worst that could happen? Okay. And I think a lot of people can relate to that, and the worst thing to me is to have a regret. I've seen so many women who had a dream of being a writer, for example, and they wait for the perfect moment, maybe when the kids are out of the house. And then it's when my husband doesn't need me. And then it's when I'm not so busy at work. And I know a woman who went and she took a writing class. She finally said, I'm doing it. And on the way home from the class, she said to me, I don't know when I'll have time to do the homework. Oh. And I said, wow, you're sabotaging and you haven't even gotten home yet. It's like, it's so scary to put ourselves out in this way, to show up in this way. But that is where the magic happens. That's our gift to the world. And so I'm so glad that you took that risk and that you made that leap and you came to New York and you started writing. So tell us where you are now with your writing.
I did the blog, and I've written many, many articles, and they were usually around dating, which was what, and when I was named one of the 10 best dating experts, it was just, they called it because of boots on the ground experience. I went on over 100 dates in that year that I was blogging about the dating. And the reason I started the blog to begin with is I was looking for that. I decided after 5 years, my husband had been gone as long as we were together, and I decided I'm going to get back out there and I'm going to date. And obviously, online dating was what I wanted to do. I mean, that was the way. I didn't know a lot of people. I wasn't going to bars and things like that. So I started writing about online dating. I wrote with humor and the ridiculous experiences that I had, and it just took off like crazy. And probably because people were looking for something like that as well. And so I wrote about my dates, and And then I wrote articles on dating, and I was actually invited to be on Steve Harvey twice. He tried to fix me up on dates, and then I was on Katie Couric's show too, and but yeah. So all these things happened, but it took, and there were lots of times that I questioned, was I making the right decision? But I just decided, again, failure was okay. It was okay. Whatever happened was going to happen, but I was going to really throw myself in. So, for example, the first class I took it through the new school, and I'm in a class with most of the students, not all, but most of the students were younger than my own daughters. And I became that obnoxious older person in a class who wants to overachieve. We had the opportunity to read what we had written. We could read, and then everybody would critique it. And so I read every single week. It was once a week, and I read every single week because I thought, I'm going to get the most amazing feedback. And I worked really hard on my essays and things like that. And the goal of this class was to be the first person to get published. And I just said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be the first person who gets published. And I was. And my professor, who was a woman my age, she was brutal. And she said, again, she used the F. I have a lot of people in my life using the F word. She said in front of the whole class, "It's an effing miracle that piece got published."
Oh.
Yeah. So I said, oh,
nasty.
yeah, exactly. And so So, but that's okay. I mean, there were a lot of things like that happened, but I knew I was good enough to get published at that point. I knew I could get better. And so I just kept working on it.
Well, I want to comment on that. And what I really admire about your process is that you showed up. This is part of the Woman of Value credo, is to show up, stand up, and speak up. And you did all three. Like you showed up for your life. You stood up for what was important to you. You didn't stand there quiet and say, well, let's let all the younger girls do their reading, and I'll just sit here kindly and I'll be the older woman in the back of the room. You were like, I'm doing this, I'm getting published, and you did. And that's the way to do it. And it's not about perfection, but there is an authenticity that comes through with your writing. And I was first introduced to your writing through one of my clients. She said, do you know Melani Robinson? She's hysterical. And I read your article and I was like, oh my God, I have to meet this woman. And I think I wrote to you and I said, I think you're my new best friend. And you said, great, I'm looking for a new best friend. And we met, and it was and I had a date that day. Right after we had a drink, I was meeting a guy for the first time, and my date with you was far better than my date with him. And we've been together ever since, and he's long gone. So,
yeah, my dates with you are better than 99.9% of the dates I go on, Sandy. I'd much rather be with you. We have much more fun.
We do have fun. So yes, your writing it's true, it's authentic, and it's real. And no MFA can give you that, and I think that's a big misunderstanding that people have, that an education is going to make them into something. It will refine your craft, but being able to speak from your heart, being able to have a sense of humor, which most people don't have naturally, that's a gift. And these are your gifts. And so I know that you have a vision for your future, and you're writing something. Actually, you just finished writing something. So tell us about this project.
That book that I wrote while I was in the middle of grief was really kind of a story of my husband and I. And I worked with an editor on it, and it's really awful. I mean, it's so awful, I can't even tell you. But it was the first thing I did. But I'm really glad that I did that, because the editor had said to me at that time, I think Russia is your story. That's your memoir. And of course, I said, no, I want to write a love story about my husband. And it was almost a way to honor him, or to do what he had suggested I do. and encouraged me to do. And it felt like, like I was really doing it. But I'm really glad that I did that, because I had basically an outline for a memoir. And that's what I just completed, was a memoir about living for 2 years in Russia. And we didn't live in Moscow or St. Petersburg. We lived in Rostov-on-Don, which is more like a village. And it was crazy, and it was insane, and it was hilarious, and sometimes it was scary. But so I just completed that memoir. I also did a pilot script for a series based on the book, and the book's called Mutterland. So right now I'm out pitching the book and trying to sell it.
It's exciting. Good luck with that.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the future for a moment. What is your vision for the future? And we want to understand where you're going, and your dream for yourself and your dream for others. What contributions do you want to make in the world?
I think that one of the things that I learned very early on with my writing, with the writing process, is if you are honest about whatever it is you're doing. I was brutally honest about dating, and brutally honest about what it's like to age, and to squeeze your body into shapewear, and to worry about, is he seeing my wrinkles? Or when you can be brutally honest, I think that is a gift, because we're all feeling these things, and I'm saying them. Maybe we're hiding behind them. Maybe we're talking to our friends. But I think that we have to. When I write with honesty, when I say this is how it was, and I'm not dancing around it, and this is how it felt, or this is what happened, or this is how it was. I think that it creates a place for people to be honest, and people that have similar experiences. So I hope that my writing resonates with other people. But honestly, I think that what I'm kind of focused on is I want to be a success. I want to sell my book. I want to do those things that I was so scared to do. I want to go for it. And so do I hope that I'm in a relationship? That would be lovely. But I can't really, I'm not going to get distracted by that. I'm very, very, very focused right now on this success. If someone comes along, fabulous. That'll be great. That'll just add to the party. But I really am I'm kind of being selfish right now. I'm focused on the things that I want, and I am, I'm 57 years old. So I need to get busy. And
Yeah.
that's what I'm focused on.
Well, you've been busy, and and I think that having this focus of you called it selfish. I from the beginning of selfless to selfish, I think we all need to take care of ourselves first. This is, to me, what a woman of value is. And when we do, we're actually better role models for everybody in our lives, including our children, which was something that was really surprising to me. I thought you have to be selfless to take care of children, but they learn from you modeling that you're following your dreams. And, I know your daughters are successful young women, and they're doing beautiful work in the world. And they, I'm sure, learned so much from watching your courage and how you went after what you really wanted.
Yeah, thank you, Sandy. I think so. I think that I do believe that I have been a good example for them, and I certainly have encouraged them to dream big. It's interesting. I have a 33-year-old and a 31-year-old, and I got married right out of college. I was 22 years old, and within 9 months, my oldest daughter was born. I did everything. And then I kind of felt like I was stuck, and neither of my girls are married, and they've never been married, and they don't have children. So they are really focused on the things that they want to do my oldest daughter, I think is ready to start thinking about marriage and children, just biologically having to think about that. But it's interesting to me because I watch them do the things that I wish I would have had the courage to do at their age. I watch them do the most amazing things, and it's really, it brings me so much joy. I can't even tell you.
That's beautiful. So now it's time for the lightning round.
Okay.
This is a quick segment. It's a bunch of questions that I'm going to ask you. We're going to go deeper into your mind. We're going to get some priceless nuggets out.
All
and
right.
that will inspire our audience. What was the number one thing holding you back from becoming a woman of value?
Confidence in myself.
What's something you failed at that taught you an important life lesson?
My first marriage. My first marriage was, I knew going in that I was making a mistake. I knew that, but I did not have the courage to say, this is not what I want to do. Now, the payoff is amazing. I have the most incredible daughters, and I wouldn't change it for anything. But it certainly made me take my time the second time around and make a very, very wise decision.
You learn not to settle again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and you have these two beautiful gifts.
I do. And he was great genetically. I mean, he might not have been my match, but he was great. Yeah.
Oh, good. He planted his seed.
That's it.
And he paved the way for your second husband.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is the best advice that you can give to a woman who has given up her value in the past and wants to become a woman of value?
If she doesn't know what she wants to do or how she's going to do it, I found that when I was alone and quiet and still, and when I said, I am going to really examine my life brutally, honestly, and I'm going to look for the places that I was full of what, and I'm going to look for, and I'm going to say that, I'm going to recognize that, and I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to look for the joys in my life. What were the things that brought me joy? And I'm going to I think the first step is to really be honest with yourself. You have to look at yourself honestly and without guilt or fear or any of those things. You don't have to tell anybody, but truly look at yourself through, take the rose-colored glasses off. Forget about being a victim or being the best mother in the world or the most selfless person or, the best friend or wife or whatever. And really look at yourself honestly, and then decide where you're going to go from there.
You mentioned getting quiet with yourself. And I think in this very distracting world we live in, it is so easy to never take the time to be present with what you want and you need, and to really give yourself that. So it's really good advice. What's your favorite woman of value quote?
Woman of value quote. Well, I love the Madeleine Albright quote about women helping other women. So I really like that. I don't have that. I don't want to misquote Madeleine Albright, but I love the idea that there's, that women have to help women. And I think that some of the hardest things, the most brutal things have happened in my life. The things that were really painful have happened as a result of another woman not being supportive, or like my professors making a comment like that, and those kind of things. So I think that I think women have to help women. Mm-hmm. They have to look for ways that they can do that. And because it's time. It's just time.
It's so time. Yeah, I love that. And I want to say as a coach, because I can't help but analyze this behavior, is that often these are women who have not realized their own dreams, who are fearful of something, who want to make other people small so that they can feel bigger. And I mean, it's sad, but we need to stay away from those people and gravitate towards the ones who will lift us up as we lift them up. That's
I
how
agree.
we stand taller on each other's shoulders.
I agree. And we have to learn to be able to spot that.
Yes.
To be able to see that, because it's much easier not to personalize something if you see it coming.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. And before you spoke about joy, the joy that we have in our lives. And I think if you have a joy radar, you can quickly realize who's bringing you joy and who's draining you and taking the joy out of your life, and stay away from those people and gravitate towards the joy givers. And I think that as we get older, we, just want to have anything in our life that just is adding to our life, and everything else, just get it out. No time for that.
absolutely. No, I agree with that 100%. And think about that. Think about cutting those people or those things that don't bring you joy. Think about cutting those out. If you look at your phone and it's someone that you go, oh, maybe just don't answer.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
don't answer it.
Yeah, I deleted an email that did not bring me joy today. Instead of answering this person, I was like, doesn't deserve an answer. Yeah, it feels good, and to not feel guilty about those things. That's the big thing to overcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like you said before, like, find your dream, live your dream, and don't feel bad about it. We have to give ourselves that. We are at the end of the lightning round with one last question. It's a big one.
Okay.
Are you ready?
And everybody should know I did not get these in advance. So
okay.
So I'm answering these on the fly.
Okay. Well, you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
How would you like to be remembered?
Wow, that is hard. I think I would like to be remembered as fun and funny and smart and supportive. That's how I would like to be remembered.
I love it. You didn't mention anything about the woman who wrote the book on Russia or had her book option.
No.
It's all the basics of who you already are and how people know you in the world. And that's a beautiful thing.
And the thing is, they can know when I'm dead. Who cares if they knew about Russia? I want all that when I'm alive. I want someone to say, "Did you write that book on Russia?" Yes, I did. When I'm dead, okay.
She was fun.
That's it. She was fun and
smart.
funny and smart and supportive.
Yeah. Awesome.
Those are the things I'd like.
Melanie, you read a part of your book to me. Actually, I think it was the ending of your book, and I thought it was so beautiful. I wanted you to share with our audience.
The last chapter of the book, I am on my road trip from Las Vegas to New York City. And so I talk about the things that I had kind of figured out. And so I'll start with this one paragraph, and then we'll go to the very end. So I said, I spent most of my adult life accommodating, often facilitating the dreams of those I loved. I was great at putting plans together as I strategized a path to the goal. I was skilled at giving inspirational talks when things didn't go exactly as hoped. And I was excellent at reassessing the situation and making adjustments. But it was always about the passions of others, my daughters, my husband, my friends. Insecurity stopped me from figuring out my own desires or even allowing myself to imagine what I could truly become. Neil knew that about me long before I faced it. The months following the loss were solitary, with plenty of stillness to examine myself honestly. I realized the pep squad was innocuous, and I was never in the game. My dreams had always been the vicarious variety because that was safer and, honestly, gave the appearance of selflessness. But playing it small hadn't been altruistic. It had been a ruse to cover a lack of belief in myself. It was, plainly, chicken shit. Okay, so now I'm at the very, very end, and I'm heading into the Lincoln Tunnel. Traffic slowed to a crawl and then a standstill halfway through Lincoln Tunnel. Looking back, we've touched on sorrowful days. Future, past, they disappear, Earth, Wind, and Fire sang, as if pressing me to stop reminiscing and focus on the immediate. I glanced at the white tile interior and saw repairs to places of weakness, where the water from the Hudson River engulfing the tunnel had seeped through. Those drip stains were the memory of the cracks, and I silently acknowledged loss would always create fissures in my most fragile places. I was marred, just like that wall. I was learning how to protect the parts of me that were frailest, though, and I knew I was stronger nearing my destination than I'd been since he went away. There I was, swamped by a river, underwater once again, yet breathing came easier. Traffic in front of me began to move, and the driver behind me beeped. I lightly pressed the gas pedal and crept forward for a few minutes until I could see beyond the stream of cars in front of me to the end of the tunnel. I was driving into something that looked messy, so the slowness of my entrance was exactly the right pace. I was prepared for a new place and a new beginning, even one that seemed chaotic. I was hopeful and figured the odds of belly laughing again were pretty good. The hair on my arms rose in anticipation of what the next few moments would bring. I was on the precipice of the fray, the Isle of 8 million, a city that pulsed every second of every day with the frenetic energy of the masses. I moved up a bit more and then stopped. I inhaled deeply and then slowly breathed out, waiting. The car in front of me proceeded, and then so did I. Bit by bit, I was moving toward a life reimagined, a place where my desires were decisively at the center because I put them there. Everything about it was unknown and unfamiliar, a puzzle of mine to construct. I knew I had the rest of my life waiting to be assembled, but in that moment, I wanted to recognize where I'd landed and the distance I had traveled. I wanted to savor how sublime it felt to finally have become the architect of my own dreams.
And that, my friends, is the journey of a woman of value. Really, it's everything that we discussed today in the podcast, and the coming to New York, the dream that you put front and center and made yourself a priority.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Well, you're living your dream. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that you read that, and I can't wait to see this book published and see the movie made, the television show, whatever is meant to be. It's going to be so exciting. Thank you so much, Melanie, for coming on the show today, for sharing your journey to becoming a woman of value and to inspire so many others to do the same.
If you would like to step more fully into your value, grab a free copy of The Ultimate Guide to Becoming a Woman of Value on my website, thewomanofvalue.com. Just click the link at the top of the homepage. And if you haven't already done so, be sure to click the subscribe button in your listening app. And if there's something in this episode that inspired you, please share it with others, because the more we share these inspirational stories, the more women of value we will have in this world. I'll see you next time.